Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I have really been looking forward to doing a walkthrough of this deck for quite some time. It's been on my wish list for quite a while, and then when I got around to finally being ready to purchase it, it wasn't available anymore from like American or US Amazon, and I think even Book Depository. But the artist, Laura Bowen, who I follow on Instagram, she had made mention that it should be back in stock in places, and so I had looked at Book Depository and they had it. So I went ahead and purchased this. I will say it took forever. Usually Book Depository can be good, from 7, around a week usually for me, I would say. I don't order from them a lot because I would prefer just the 2 days of Amazon Prime. But my experience has been roughly 7 days. This was definitely more than 2 weeks, but it came. Here it is. So this is called the Dreamtime Reading Cards by Laura Bowen. She also does a second deck, which is similar and certainly I think would go together, but it's based on water, animals, and energy. So it says connect with the ancient spirit and nature of Australia, and this is by Rockpool Publishing, who I am quite fond, growing very fond of Rockpool Publishing decks. So we have the back talking about it. It is a beautifully illustrated set of 36 reading cards plus a guidebook created by Laura Bowen. Draw on the ancient wisdom and spirit of Aboriginal Australia. And then so it features flora, fauna, and sacred spaces of land, water, and sky, and contains spiritual meaning and personal messages. She is a writer, artist, and nature lover. Her indigenous connections are to the Warimi Biripi people of the Manning River area of New South Wales in Australia. So we have this really nice, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That was very loud. It has a really nice magnetic box. Oh my goodness. Noxious motorcycles. I love magnetic clipped boxes. They're probably my favorite. And we have this beautiful dot painting, which of course all of this artwork is done through what's known as dot painting, and she actually does it with feathers and things that she finds in nature. So I thought that was really cool as well. So it comes in this box. Of course, it has the guidebook right here, which has got full color images, which I adore. And then, the deck or the book itself is full color and really beautiful. And the images are actual size of the cards. So you can just, go to bed and take this with you and read about the things and have the full image with all its color glory. This is similar to my deck, and it's something that I obviously really appreciate in a guidebook, because again, you don't want to have to reorder your cards or sit every time you want to sit down and work through the guidebook. So that to me is a big bonus. So there's that. How many pages is it? It's not long. You just get a little bit on each. 91, but there's a nice, a nice amount here. We'll see how those pan out in a moment. And then we have the box. Now, these are my least favorite things in boxes, and mine will just end up sitting in here because these I feel are rather useless. They, the cards just slide underneath them, and then it gets really annoying to get them out. So that's not something that I tend to keep in terms of storage, because it's, I think it's a good idea for obviously, shipping, because it keeps things from sliding around, and they're in a little sleeve which holds them in place, but once you take that out, they just start to slide behind everything and it gets really annoying. So that just goes by the wayside. But you still have a nice box, right, to hold your cards and your deck. So there we have that. Really lovely box. Happy with that. So let's turn this over and look. You can see this sort of beautiful oranges and yellows, deep, gorgeous colors. You can see that reflected inside here on the back. We can see that on the back of the book. And I really love that because you definitely have a cohesive sense to all of this together. It just is very cohesively beautiful together, and I appreciate that little sense of cohesiveness of the deck, book, and box. Obviously, I'm going to be doing these edges probably in black, although I have to say I need to look at it closer because it almost seems like a really dark brown. You see in natural light. So I'm not sure. It'd probably be black, but it may be sort of a really dark brown that I have marker. We shall see, but definitely, I mean, we've got these really vibrant, gorgeous backs and fronts, and then the white cut. You know, again, it's not anything against the deck. That's just, and many people love that, but for me, that will be one of the first things that I do. Rockpool Publishing cardstock is okay. It's not great. And it's not horrible. It's good for shuffling, but you can really already see a little bit of just roughness, more so than chipping, but having that black on the edge will keep it from being obvious about that. So it's like, okay, it's not as thick as, say, a Blue Angel, but it's not as flimsy as some other ones. Like I'm looking at you, color knowledge cards with a horrible cardstock. So it's kind of like, it's okay cardstock, but good for shuffling. So let's take a quick look at the book. You have, I've read part of this already. She has the acknowledgement. She says here, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Bellinger Valley in the Grubinger Nation. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the elders, both those who have passed and those who are with us, for the knowledge and wisdom they have shared and the strength and determination they have shown. It is because of their courage and wisdom and resilience that Aboriginal culture has survived despite many obstacles as a continuous living culture for over 40,000 years. And then she gives an introduction about her connections to what nations or tribes and the country. She talks about how each place had their own sort of country, and they were responsible for earth, wind, sky in that area. And so she talks about that, and she also talks about how the longevity of the Aboriginal people of Australia. And then she puts this introduction, says that these reading cards were created so that I can share with you, us, right, the natural messengers from my childhood town in the Bellinger Valley on the mid-north coast of New South Wales in Australia. The cards include flora, fauna, and sacred spaces of land, water, and sky. They reflect that which surrounds me, exists below me, and lives above me. My connection to these animals, insects, birds, and natural landmarks and elements are all relative to where I stand and what I see. So I think that that's really beautiful. And she says, I wish to offer you, and this is really important, I'm going to talk about that in a second. I wish to offer you the opportunity to view my little valley through my art and my observations, to share the connections I have with the world around me and understand more about the messengers in these cards. Welcome to my Dreamtime reading cards, Laura. I think that that's really important because, there's a lot of discussion, and rightly so, in the Tarot and Oracle community about appropriation, or I think probably more correctly, misappropriation of culture and beliefs of a people. And, one of those could certainly, and however you might deem or describe or interpret the misappropriation, which is in a nutshell when you take art or belief systems or culture, the culture of a repressed nation, right, or a nation or ethnic group, and the oppressor or the people who have the privilege over those oppressed areas, misappropriates that culture for their own gain. And again, I don't, intention of this video is not to get into a big discussion about that. It is a discussion that's happening a lot, but I don't think a walkthrough is a place to do a full discussion. But the point being, for example, just giving an example, would be, say, a dream catcher, which is a Native American art piece. So if a Native American chooses to create a dream catcher and sell that or give that to somebody, and you purchase that, okay, so you have that. If some corporate America that has no connections whatsoever with the Native American culture decides to create a cheap dream catcher and sell it and make money off of it, they are the culture that has subsumed and or oppressed the Native American culture is making money on the misappropriation of their culture, and that kind of activity is what often people have issues with and are discussing in the tarot community. So when we make a tarot deck, say again staying with the Native American, which is would be the equivalent in the United States. There's other equivalents, but I'm just using that. But so for example, if I do have some Native American in me, so maybe you could start to, that's when you start to get a little bit foggy. But again, I'm not going to go into a full discussion about that here. But if I had zero Native American in me, and I as a person decided I was going to create a Native American deck, tarot deck, and having no ties whatsoever to the Native American people, representing those images as I see the Native American culture, nothing that I've experienced, and make money off of that. Is that appropriation? Is that misappropriation of a culture where I am going to financially benefit from appropriating their culture that I have no ties to? Now, there's again a lot of question about this, of whether or not that can be done respectfully, whether that can't be done respectfully. All of these kinds of things that go into a big conversation, and I definitely would urge for people to have that conversation both with themselves and with other people, and have that you can have a respectful conversation and discussion of that, because I think there's a lot to be talked about on both sides. Some people would argue the fact that we can all experience and enjoy what's one of the benefits of the time that we live in, that we can enjoy and benefit from exposure to many different cultures. And just because I am not of the Native American culture, let's say I have zero blood ties to Native American culture, I can't then experience or resonate with that, which of course some people will argue takes away the understanding that sometimes we have multiple lives that maybe has had Native American culture, or sometimes we simply just resonate with a cultural or a belief system that is not the one that we may be raised in. And especially then that gets compounded when you're in the United States as well as other areas, because very, very few areas are culturally pure, right? There's all kinds of migrations that take place across time. But certainly the United States is really known as the melting pot. We didn't, unless you're Native American, you did not come from this land. You did not, your roots are not from this land. Your mythological roots are not from this land, some would say. But I was actually born on this land. So what does then that say? That my feet are firmly planted in American soil. And so then American mythology, including Native American mythology, does have, if you believe in connections with the land and things, does have an impact on who I am in a spiritual sense, right? But we also have ties to many other places. Many people in the United States have strong ties to Europe, strong ties to specific countries. Some are, like my family, have very strong German ties, very, not far distant. We have full-blooded Germans and full-blooded Irish people in my grandparents, and full-blooded Swedish people in grandparents. So you have ties to those countries as well and those belief systems. And so it becomes quite problematic, right, to see, to have that discussion. But it's an important one because it's less about, I think, the user coming to something respectfully, as it is about is the person creating this and gaining money from the production. Is that a genuine thing that they should be gaining money from? So anyways, very, very rough tip of the iceberg discussion about the idea of appropriation and misappropriation. But one of the things that in some of the discussions that I have seen, is sometimes they get really ugly, and sometimes they can be held quite respectfully, and there's a lot to be learned on both sides from them. And one of the things that I have, I think, seen across the board is that a lot of it has to do with intention, and that if the creator of the deck comes forward from their culture and says, you know, this is something which I want to share with you, which is exactly what she's written here, that sort of opens that cultural experience up to the user to be able to share in this experience. And so I really like the way that she has written that, which I think does open it up, because I don't have any cultural ties to Australia, or certainly not to Aboriginal Australia. But you can look at these artworks, because that is the beauty of art, and that's the beauty of spirituality, is that I think, for me personally, spirituality across all cultures are answering the same questions. They're speaking to the same human concerns. We are all connected by the same web. We are all human beings on the same earth. We can see different voices expressing those connections and asking those questions and answering those questions, but they are all speaking to the same thing. And so there is certainly no reason why we cannot see the art and hear the stories and the myths of another culture and not be touched very deeply by them. And I think that does quite a disservice to think otherwise, because we are first and foremost people, all on the same earth. But I think anything of that nature needs to be approached with respect. And so much of the discussion of misappropriation, I think, hinges on the intention of both the creator and the intention of the person who is purchasing and using what has been put out. So just thought we'd throw that out there. My experience, the first time that I remember reading about, like, outside of obviously school and just the basic geographical history and things of that nature, there was a whole huge series of books in my library that was not appropriate for my age. I was quite young. I had to have been under 7th grade, and there's this whole series. I do not know the name of the series. I need to try to find it, but it was about the colonization of Australia by Europeans, generally, you know, looking into the penal colonies and these kinds of things. So early colonization by Europeans into Australia, and it was a huge. I just remember there was a lot of books. They were big books. And I have no clue. Again, I was quite young, and I was too young to have been reading them. But that was my first, like, really, like, delve into, which I'm sure was not, like, historically appropriate or accurate. And I have no clue, because, again, I don't even remember what they were called. But I remember just being fascinated with it because of that experience of reading this long cycle of books and those experiences. And yeah, so that was the first thing that I remember ever of, which I'm sure was probably cultural misappropriation, but I'm not sure, because I, again, don't remember the books. But for me, this type of artwork, such as this type of dot painting, it has a very shamanic-y vibe to it. And I know I use the word shamanic-y, it's not a word, but it encapsulates, and I need to think of a better way, but there is a very shamanistic energy to this style of art. A very strong connection to the land, which, you know, I have the shamanic healing cards that are one of my favorite oracle decks. And it is not dot painting, but is that similar sort of what we would maybe call primitive artwork, that almost in the style of what you might see in caves and that kind of thing. And there is something for me that is deeply resonates with this style of deck and the style of artwork, because it just speaks to the deep self. It drops, for me, it drops me deep into the web and deeply embedded in connection with natural surroundings, which, as you can see, is sort of the intention here, and it makes sense. So I'm really excited to be working with these cards. There are some great reviews about this deck out there. Katie Flowers, who has done some great videos on this. I think she may have also done some videos about, she is from Australia, so she would be of European descent in Australia versus Aboriginal First People. And so she, I think, has done some videos about, you know, kind of juggling and the juxtaposition of country. And again, having that same, her feet, you know, she was born, as far as I'm aware, in Australia. You know, this is her land. Whether, you know, this is her land of her birth. But then there's all of these conflicting energies because of the misuse of power, and that power struggle between the Aboriginal people and some atrocities that were done, which happened, you know, again, not that Australia is unique to that you see in other places where you have that imbalance of power and atrocities that occur. And how do you balance that, and how do you balance that in terms of working with decks and that type of thing. So I think she's got some videos on that. If I can find that, I will put links to those, but she raves about these cards, as well as the water version, which I will eventually, those you can get on Amazon, that I will also be ordering. But I knew this was a little bit more broader base, covering land, water, and air, and so that's why I thought this would be the best ones to start with. So, I know that's a long introduction. It's literally been 22 minutes, but, you know, it's stuff that needed to be talked about, in my opinion. So, in terms of the book, it's a lovely done. It talks about daily cards. It has a past, present, and future called the Pathfinder. I really like the look of this Southern Cross because it gives a little bit of extra information. So three different spreads, kind of standard to Oracle decks. Because, again, as I've said in many things, I tend to use Oracle decks as 3-card readings. That tends to be how I use them, and so, you know, it's kind of hard to get too crazy with spreads in an Oracle card pack, so they do a good job. I love that she talks about you taking sort of what she has expressed here in this deck and having and applying that to your messages from nature, talking about the colors and what those colors represent, what the messenger is doing, what the animal is. Is it nesting? Is it flying? Is it kind of looking for food? What is it doing? How many of them are there? Is this a flock of birds or is this a single bird? So really asking you to pay attention to your own surroundings, to take this as sort of a jumping off point to paying attention and seeing oracles and those messages from nature in your own surroundings. I think that's really fantastic, and I love that. And then it goes into the cards. And it has, again, a full-size color representation of the card. And it has the card, the name, the keyword, which is on the card itself. As you can see, the card here, you've got the number, the name, and the keyword on the card. So we have that at the beginning. And then we have a page, so a good chunk of why that particular word and what this particularly stands for. Some of them are quite, butterfly. These are, ones that we are campfire. We all have centipedes, cicadas. That's certainly part of my growing up, is hearing cicadas. But other things such as bandy or clapsticks, trying to find someone, maybe this guana I don't have around me. Tree frogs we do. So some are, like moon is quite universal, so some are things that we have experience with the world over, and some are very, very specific to Australia and to her specific place in Australia. And so being able to read about that and what that might equate to is obviously very helpful. So let's take a look at, read this just so you can see the style of the text. Okay, so here we have the bandy card for balance. The bandy is a very shy, small, nocturnal snake. It is notable for the striking black and white stripes of even widths that cover its entire body. Its stripy appearance creates an optical illusion, making it very difficult to tell which end is the head and which end is the tail. Because it lives entirely on blind snakes, which are small, shiny snakes that live in the ground and resemble large earthworms, it is limited to habitats that have an abundance of blind snakes. When threatened, the bandy has a very unusual defense mechanism. It raises its body off the ground while quickly moving away from the perceived threat, making S-shaped hoops. The bandy represents duality. The equal number of black and white stripes on its body reminds you of your own personal extremes. They correspond to those you show and those you hide, those you consider good and those you consider bad. The stripes are also representative of 2 points of view, or a situation where there is more than one choice available to you. The bandy's lesson is one of balance, of understanding that there will always be 2 sides to every story, and that not everyone has the same ideas on what is right and wrong. The bandy encourages you to explore your morals, what you believe, and why you behave the way you do. This is a time when you need to find balance between the opposites and extremes within yourself and those in your environment. So you can see, very well written. I quite like it. I've read some of the other cards as well. And I really love, sometimes when I've been like, oh, well, that's interesting, why that particular word, keyword for certain things, I feel like the guidebook does a beautiful job in exploring why that might be. So, really lovely guidebook. So it goes through, obviously, each one of the cards. And then it has a section about the author and illustrator, which is the same person, Laura Bowen, and then talks about the artworks for the deck there. Then it has some advertisement for Rockpool Publishing. So really lovely guidebook. I'm looking forward to sitting down tonight and reading the whole thing. But there we have that. So let's take a look at the cards. As I said, Rockpool Publishing cardstock is just okay. It's not great. It's not the worst. It's not the best. Beautiful, beautiful backing, which does slightly tempt me to maybe use these tones in the sides. I haven't decided yet. That's an important question. We do have a border of kind of a natural, almost brownsy colors with blacks on the edges in the border. It's not a flat black, as you can see. It's very earthy feeling. And the same thing on the back. It's a little bit more flat black spaces, but still kind of a brown black there. So quite earthy, which is how this deck has always felt to me, which is what's so interesting about the other deck, which is quite water-based. Okay. I think I might have zoomed in a little too close. So let's go ahead and go through these. We have the bandy snake for balance. So here we have the Bat Island, which is about called for intuition, and it talks about an island that actually has a large colony of flying foxes, which are apparently very large bats with fox-like faces. And so it does talk a lot about trusting your instincts, right? The way that they fly at night, and apparently flying fox bats don't actually have the sonar that bats are kind of known for. And so we have that idea of finding other ways and trusting your intuition and things of that nature. It's really neat to be able to see how these tie in together. We have the bushfire for rebirth. And it talks about how Aboriginal Australians used fire as a tool for managing their country. They often traveled around their country based on where the food was, and when they were finished in an area, it was often set ablaze. This was for a number of reasons. First, a lot of native eucalyptus trees need fire to germinate their seeds. It also clears the undergrowth to create new growth. And so this is how they manage their land. So that's quite interesting, right? You would think of a brush fire as being quite a devastating thing, and you wouldn't think like, okay, why is there rebirth here? Well, if it's used correctly, it can be that yes, it's destructive, but it also germinates the next cycle. So that's really gorgeous. We have the butterfly, which of course we often see for transformation. In this deck, I think that's a different card. But we have that idea of beauty here with the butterflies, which is also quite appropriate. We have the campfire as the storyteller keyword, and I absolutely love that idea of the knowledge that's gained through telling stories, of course, is very important to me, and so I love a storyteller card. Here we have a carpet snake or carpet python, and it's interesting again because here we have the word as being home. It says the carpet snake teaches you about the comforts of home and the importance of having a private space, because it says it often takes up residence over winter in the roofs of houses where it can hibernate, keep warm, and enjoy the odd visiting rodent. So I just love that because you're kind of getting to know a little bit about the habits of these different animals and how that might, because you really wouldn't necessarily think, oh, here's a snake image, let's discard for home. So I quite love it, really love it. Here we have the centipede. Oh, I remember centipedes in Africa were frightening. But at least the part of Africa that I was in. But we have this as focus. It says that where she lives, the most common one is called a tiger centipede because of its large orangey stripes there. It's fast moving and very focused on its mission of searching for prey. So it has that idea of focus. It's actually a fierce predator. Here we have the cicada, which we definitely have, and this is where the transformation is. It says of all the insects that go through major transformations, the cicada is the one that spends the longest time in its chrysalis form. The cicada remains underground in its shell for many years before it crawls out under the protection of the moon to shed its hard casing and let its wings burst out. So it's that one of transformation, and that sometimes it may take longer than others, right? So that's really wonderful. Here we have clap sticks. I love that there's a reverberations, because that's, you know, I'm working on an oracle deck myself, and for me that idea of vibration is something that is definitely going to be one of my cards. And so I really love this idea of having, this is similar, that idea of reverberation. So these are two pieces of woods that are clap sticks. Let me find it. The noise they create is deep and rhythmic and reverberates well. They are used for music, dance, and ritual. And so I love that idea of cleansing and clearing space via vibrations, which is what she talks about. So I was really excited to see that. Very excited to see that. Here we have the death adder, which is a slow moving and robust. You can see it's quite thick here. It has a large head and short, stocky S-shaped body. It will lay in wait on a walking track of its prey, concealing itself. So it has to have a lot of planning and patience because it's not fast moving. So we have the strategy there. Here we have the Dragonfly for clarity, which sometimes you see dragonflies for transformation. I'm seeing its ability to hover, associated with seeing. Due to its ability to hover and move quickly, the dragonfly is also associated with seeing situations from different angles. Also, because of the element of air, we have that idea of clarity as well. I think that's beautiful. Here we have the eagle for observation, which makes quite sense. I think we can all generally associate with that. You can see that there are also, I'm just kind of noticing this myself, there are also, so you have your earthy border, but you do have another border with, it's a different color tone. Now it looks to be similar in that I can still see a tree trunk kind of here, but it's like a different painting that's underneath, and it is different for each of the cards and kind of goes with. I quite like that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of borders, but these I think really work with the color tones and just kind of amp up that sense of color that's used here. So you can see that I noticed it a couple cards back, but I wasn't paying strict attention to it until this one. I love the fig tree for knowledge. Again, trees in general for me work very well with the idea of knowledge. And the fig tree is a symbol of life and knowledge, she talks about in the book. I love the firefly for searching, the light that's shining here. I think that's beautiful. The freshwater turtle. So we do see air animals, we do see earth animals, and we're definitely seeing water as well, which is why I started with this deck, because I felt like it had that versatility, which we see here. But it sort of survives in two different elements, water to live in and air to breathe. And so I think that's really beautiful for that concept of versatility there. Here we have the goanna for self-preservation. Apparently this covers a number of different species of the monitor lizard family. It's very agile, can run very fast when threatened. It's important to know your own limits and do what is right for you. Take off and run when necessary. Here we have the green tree frog for health. The green tree frog can only survive where the air and the environment are healthy. Its presence is a good sign that the area you're living in is fresh and clear of environmental toxins and pollutions. So have that for health. We have the Gumnut Blossom for contentment. Apparently the gum tree or the eucalyptus tree, and I'm going to not offend all of my Australian viewers by singing the Kookaburra song, but I love it. My kids loved it. We did not learn it from, obviously I'm pretty sure my kids learned it from, was it Barney? I think it was Barney. It was something like one of those things, and that song just stuck. My kids both loved it, and we sang it all the time. After bushfires or periods of long drought, the gum nuts burst into flower in an assortment of colors, and many of the blossoms smell and taste like honey, and it is because of this that they are often associated with contentment and the sweet things in life. Love that. I love the lightning card. I love the looks of it. I love the idea of change. I just think it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Here we have the Magpie. I love this as a spoken word. Of course, they have a very distinctive song, and they are also really known for being quite talkative, so very chattery, and so that is beautiful. Here we have the moon for secrets, which is beautiful. Here we have the moth for the shadow self. The bongong moth played a major part in the diet of some of the traditional peoples in Australia. It is a very large moth, almost as long as your hand. Many language groups would join together to feast on these moths, which were a fantastic food source full of good fats. It is because the bogong moth was so important in the traditional diet of some people that it was shared communally. This needed a high level of trust between the different groups and tolerance of each other's differences. The moth as a messenger is associated with hidden meanings and information, and it also represents your shadow self because of the nocturnal and the ability to see in the darkness. Here we have a mountain for strong foundations. Love this. I love the image. I love the mountain card. I love having it for strong foundations. Here we have the mullet, which is quite different, I think, than our 80s understanding of the mullet. It is a fish of coastal waters and estuaries. Every year the mullet gather in the local river and together form great circles in the water. These great circles contain hundreds of fish feeding and spawning. So it represents community, large gatherings, and celebrations. Love that. Here we have the native bee. Is a small stingless bee found only in Australia. The honey from the native bee was enjoyed by some Aboriginal language groups and formed an important source of energy in their diet. The native bee represents sweetness, hard work, and prosperity. Beautiful night sky of the soul journey. I mean, how awesome is that? Love these cards. The ocean for surrender. Love, again, the art. Love the ocean being there. Love the keyword. Red belly black snake for independence. It prefers to live near bodies of water. It's a ferocious mother when it comes to protecting her young, which unlike most snakes are birthed alive. Although usually very independent, red-bellied black snakes will often gather while pregnant and help each other defend the next generation. It is associated with sisterhood and strength, and also symbolizes sexuality, blood, and bloodlines. The river for movement. Love it. I love that it kind of looks like a map of river as well. I think that's really amazing. We have the sea turtle for travel. It starts its life as an egg buried in sand on a beach. When the time comes, it turns into a hatchling and goes to the sound of the sea, using imprinted knowledge that it must get to the ocean and safety it represents. In the ocean, it will grow very large, travel far, and see the world. The sea turtle symbolizes travel both internally and overseas. But it always returns to the place where it was born to lay its eggs, and its children does the same. I love that. The Southern Cross as the Pathfinder. It says the seasons in the Aboriginal calendar are marked by the different constellations visible in the night sky at certain times of the year. The Southern Cross is a star constellation visible from the southern hemisphere and has been an important symbol throughout Australia's history. The Southern Cross star constellation has many Dreamtime stories associated with it, and it features in the stories of many tribes, each with a different version about its origin. Growing up, the Southern Cross was the first constellation I was taught to look for. I was told how to pinpoint it and in what directions it was visible during different times of the year. It is associated with points of the compass, and like a compass, it helps you find your path and place. I love that. Okay, so here we have the spider for connections, which is perfection for me. If you follow my channel, you know that I do a lot of, my personal path has a lot to do with the web of weird and the idea of connections, and so to have the spider and have it mean connections with the web on it, you know, it's like, yes, 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 thank you very much, Miss Laura. Here we have the sugar glider for courage. Apparently it is a possum, and tiny possum glides from tree to tree by spreading its arms and legs. Yeah, I mean, you got to let go of the support and just go. That's beautiful. I love that. Love, love, love that. Here we have the beautiful sun for fertility, which I think is gorgeous, associated with warmth and nurturing. It's interesting because while we see it more in some Aboriginal cultural groups, the sun, rather than being associated with masculinity, is described as female. So it's that the sun was considered the great mother, giver of life, and of warmth and nourishing of the earth. So that's quite interesting. I love that. Kind of a little bit different in how we would normally approach the sun. Here we have the walkabout. I really liked this because the keyword was bare feet, because it does talk about walkabouts, like going off into the into the desert, so to speak, as a rite of initiation. But she also talks about the term walkabout for some groups just meaning that connection to the land, their feet, bare feet on the land, very, very in tune with the coin cups or coin suit of the Margaret Peterson deck with a lot of the footprints, and so I really love that. And then the last card is the waterfall card for release. So I just think this is a beautiful deck. I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled with the earth and the, earthy kind of nature, the watery nature, the things that cross both, the air. It really feels extremely balanced in that sense, which is what I was hoping for from what I could see. And I am thrilled with this. Really, really happy. Yeah, I'm really excited to work with this deck. And I can definitely see using in conjunction with my shamanic healing cards. I'm also curious how it will look with my Lenormand, to be honest. It's quite, large. It's quite a finger spread to get it this way, but you can definitely do, or I have longer hands, but you can, because it's thinner and more flexible, you can do either the corner shuffle that some people do with larger cards, or you can even do the side shuffle that you can also do because it is a thinner cardstock. So we have lightning for change. We have the magpie for spoken word. Change the way that we're speaking, right? And use maybe the spoken word for release, because once we can speak the words, we can experience that sense of release, which is going to allow that change to occur. Absolutely beautiful. I love that. I love it so much. So you could do something similar then, right? And take, say, communication. Now, I don't often use birds for communication. I generally use letter or writer, but birds can be. And because this is the magpie, I could then take, obviously, my deck. And I'm just going to, I'm just trying to, more of a testy thing here. So then I can go and find the birds card and to pull 2 cards before and the 2 cards after it, and see that idea of communication and chatter and talking. We can see new connections, new friendships and loyalties being made, and that with sort of that letting go that can be painful, but that harvest, which can, the idea of release also, right? We can have something new, a new message coming through. So yeah. I can definitely see using this deck in conjunction with my own, which is, obviously something that I look for in decks because it's a primary Lenormand deck for me. So there we have it. I just wanted to, I know this is a little bit of a longer Oracle deck review because of kind of the chat in the beginning, but I hope that you have enjoyed this.